Part 1. The Forbidden Whisper, the President Who Hunted in Shadows.
What if I told you, the man carved into marble, the Saint of Liberty, the voice that thundered, "A house divided cannot stand," carried another secret, not written in textbooks, not sung in hymns, but whispered in blood, etched into the pages of a journal never meant for mortal eyes? Abraham Lincoln, the Emancipator, the martyr, the president who gave his life to heal a fractured nation. But before the speeches, before the monuments, before the bullet in Ford's theater, there was the axe, there was the night, and there were the creatures that fed in silence long before America was born. The story begins not with power, but with loss. A boy in Indiana, tall, barefoot, silent. His hands calloused from work, his heart scarred by grief. On a single night, a name was carved into him. Jack Bartz, a man of cruelty, a slaver with teeth that gleamed too sharp in lamplight. Lincoln's mother, Nancy, fell ill after crossing him. But her sickness was not of this world. It crept like shadow beneath her skin, draining her until dawn. By sunrise, she was gone. The boy buried her with his own hands, and in the hollow silence that followed, a promise was made, wordless but eternal. One day, he would avenge her. Years passed. The boy became a man. The scar remained. Tall now, towering, solemn, but still carrying that wound in the quiet of his gaze. When his father died, so did the oath of silence forced upon him. Lincoln took up his father's old pistol and walked into the night. He found Jack Bartz at the docks, pulled the trigger, but the man did not fall. The grin that answered him was not human. Pale skin, eyes like coals, teeth like knives. For the first time, Abraham Lincoln met the truth. Vampires were real, and they ruled from the shadows. He would have died there, a martyr before his time, had not another shadow intervened. A figure cloaked in black, calm, precise, eyes old with sorrow. The man called himself Henry, and with a single stroke, he saved Lincoln's life and ended his childhood forever.
Part 2. The Initiation, the man who taught the dead to fear. When Lincoln awoke, he was no longer at the docks. The smell of blood and brine was gone, replaced with the scent of old wood, burning oil, and a silence too deliberate to be peace. The stranger sat in the corner, half in shadow, half in candlelight, his face ageless, neither youth nor elder, handsome yet hollow, eyes that seemed to remember centuries and regret every moment of them. He said, "My name is Henry. You should be dead." Lincoln's hand twitched toward the axe leaning by the bed. Henry noticed. He didn't move to stop him. "You saw him," Henry continued. "Jack Bartz. You saw what he is." Lincoln's voice cracked from silence, raw with rage. "He killed my mother." Henry did not flinch. He had heard those words before, from men in every age, from Rome to Constantinople, from Carpathian hills to the swamps of the New World. The names changed. The grief did not. "You think vengeance will heal you?" Henry's tone was almost kind. "It won't." Lincoln's hands clenched. "Then teach me something that will." A long silence. Then a faint smile. Not of joy, but of recognition. "Only the living," Henry said softly, "can kill the dead." And so began the initiation. Not in halls of marble, but in wilderness and ruin. In the deep woods where shadows moved like water and every branch creaked like bone. Henry taught him to listen, not to noise, but to silence. To hear the heartbeat of prey through walls, to smell lies in the stillness of a room. He taught him the weapons: silver, pure, incorruptible; fire, to cleanse what silver could not; and the axe, a farmer's tool remade into a holy instrument. But more than weapons, Henry taught restraint. He warned, no attachments, no distractions, no love. Lincoln nodded, but in his heart, he knew he could not keep that vow. By the end of winter, the boy who had buried his mother was gone. In his place stood a hunter, solemn, relentless, marked not by hatred, but by purpose. And yet Henry carried his own secret. The reason he hunted, the curse he bore. A truth Lincoln would not learn. Not yet. Part 3. The First Hunt. Baptism by Blood. The night of his first hunt was moonless. The world felt hollow, as if holding its breath for the blood about to be spilled. Henry led him through swampland and rot. No map, no lantern, only instinct and silence. "Your prey is near," Henry whispered. "They never wander far from hunger." Lincoln gripped the axe. His hands shook, not from fear, but anticipation. The creature appeared at the water's edge. At first glance, human. A man hauling crates under the pale shimmer of stars. But Lincoln had learned to listen. No heartbeat, no breath, only hunger. "Strike quick," Henry murmured. "Strike true. Do not hesitate." Lincoln stepped into the clearing. The creature turned and smiled. Its face split unnaturally wide, teeth jagged like shards of bone. Eyes glowed, not red, but black, absorbing light, reflecting nothing. Lincoln swung. The axe sang through air, bit deep into pale flesh. The creature shrieked, a sound older than language, half agony, half rage. The fight was brutal. The vampire moved faster than thought. Claws raked across Lincoln's arm, teeth snapped inches from his throat. But the boy had learned well. Every step, every strike, echoes of Henry's relentless training. At last, the axe struck true. Silver met heart. The creature convulsed and collapsed into ash. Silence followed. But it was not victory, Lincoln felt. It was revelation. "They're real," he whispered. "God help us! They're real!" Henry stepped forward, placing a hand on Lincoln's shoulder. "Welcome," he said softly, "to the true history of your country." And then Henry told him what no history book would ever admit, that vampires had walked America since before the Revolution, feeding in silence, shaping wars, thriving on slavery, on suffering, on blood. "They do not seek power," he murmured. "They seek livestock, and for centuries we have fed them." Lincoln's grip tightened on the axe. This was no longer vengeance. It was purpose. And purpose, he realized, is heavier than any weapon. Part 4. The Blood Empire. Slavery in the Shadows. America was tearing at its seams. The North preached freedom. The South clung to chains. But beneath the clash of ideals, another war simmered. No flag dared carry. Henry led Lincoln south. There, plantations spread like open wounds across the land. Fields of cotton, fields of blood. Men whipped not just for labor, but for feeding. Slavery, Henry whispered, is not merely cruelty, it is sustenance. Vampires had embedded themselves deep within the South's beating heart. They owned the fields, they owned the markets, they owned the men who called themselves masters. To the human world, slaves were property. To the vampires, they were cattle. Lincoln's heart burned. The boy who buried his mother in silence now stood amidst thousands buried in unmarked graves. He had sworn vengeance for one life,
But here, he saw millions. The hunt changed, no longer personal, now crusade. But crusades demand sacrifice, and sacrifice demands solitude. No attachments, Henry had warned, no love, no family, not if you want to survive. Lincoln failed that test. In Springfield, a woman named Mary entered his life, elegant, curious, fierce. Her laughter, rare in Lincoln's world of blood and ash, pierced through the silence he wore like armor. She saw the man behind the hunter, the boy behind the scars, and despite every warning carved into his soul, Lincoln loved her. He courted by day, hunted by night, words of liberty on his lips, blood on his hands. Mary did not know the full truth, but she saw enough shadows in his eyes to understand. He fought for something far greater than himself. Meanwhile, Henry's war revealed darker truths. A name whispered among vampires: Adam, ancient, relentless, patriarch of the American brood. The hand behind slave markets, the architect of silent feeding grounds. Lincoln's crusade would inevitably lead to Adam. But Adam was not merely a monster, he was an empire. And empires do not fall quietly.
Part 5. The Silent War, a house divided.
The battlefield shifted. No longer swamps and alleys, but halls of power. No longer axes in the dark, but speeches beneath chandeliers. Lincoln traded his hunting garb for suits of black wool, the axe for words sharpened like blades. But even as crowds cheered his call for freedom, he felt the eyes in the shadows, watching, waiting, hungry. Henry warned him, "Politics is bloodier than war, and vampires thrive where men trade ideals for power." In southern plantations, Adam fed, not on blood alone, but on despair, on the quiet surrender of a people chained for centuries. The Confederacy was not merely rebellion, it was a feeding ground, a kingdom of cattle disguised as men. For every vote Lincoln won, Adam tightened his grip. For every speech on liberty, another throat was cut in silence. The war for America's soul was being fought in two worlds, one written in newspapers, the other carved in ash and shadow. In Springfield, Mary became Lincoln's anchor. She saw the fatigue in his eyes, the tremor in his hands when the crowds were gone. He could not tell her everything, but she felt the weight of what he carried and loved him still. Their union was both blessing and curse. For Mary was light in a life of darkness, but light draws predators, and Adam's gaze had already fallen upon her. The first whispers of civil war rose. States seceded, brothers turned on brothers, and beneath it all, the vampires rejoiced. Chaos fed them, hatred sustained them, blood, human and otherwise, flowed freely. Lincoln stood at the threshold of destiny, president to a nation at war, hunter to a world in denial, a man with one hand on scripture and the other on an axe. And in the silence between battles, he wondered, can freedom survive when even the shadows conspire against it?
Part 6. The Revelation, the Curse of the Immortal. The war had erupted. Blue and gray clashed in open fields. Cannon fire thundered across the valleys. But beneath the smoke of muskets, another war raged unseen. Vampires walked among the Confederates, fast, silent, impervious to lead. They fed between battles. They turned prisoners at night. And in the chaos of blood and mud, no one noticed the dead rising to fight again. Lincoln had prepared for this. Silver melted from coins, cutlery, even wedding bands, forged into bullets, bayonets, and axes.
Freedom would be bought not only with courage, but with purity. On the eve of Gettysburg, Henry revealed the truth Lincoln had long suspected. "I am one of them." The words fell heavy, heavier than cannon fire. Lincoln's grip tightened on the axe. Henry did not flinch. He offered his throat. "Do it," Henry whispered. "Strike, end me if you must, but know this, I cannot kill them. No vampire can. That is why I chose you." Silence. The campfires burned low. Men prayed in whispers, unaware of the war within their president's chest. Lincoln lowered the axe. "You saved me," he said. "You made me this." Henry's eyes glimmered, sorrow, not relief. "Then finish what I cannot." At dawn, they marched together. Men with rifles, hunters with axes, priests carrying silver crucifixes. Against them waited Adam, ancient patriarch, crowned in blood and flame. The fields of Gettysburg became something worse than war. Bayonets snapped against undead flesh. Bullets passed harmless through hollow bodies. Men screamed as fangs tore through ranks. The dead fed on the dying. The dying rose to join the dead. Lincoln waded through carnage, axe singing arcs of silver light. Every strike, a prayer. Every kill, a confession. Henry fought beside him, a cursed immortal wielding humanity's last hope. And yet, even in battle, a darker fear gnawed at Lincoln. What if victory meant nothing? What if freeing the slaves only fed the vampire's hunger elsewhere? What if history itself was just another feeding ground? As the sun set on Gettysburg, neither side truly won. The Union endured. The vampires scattered. But Adam still lived. And Mary was already marked.
Part 7. The Last Confrontation. Blood for Freedom. Night fell over the burning fields. The Union banners hung torn, soaked in blood, human and otherwise. The war for a nation's soul was no longer fought in parliaments or pulpits. It was here, in the dark, where screams drowned out prayers. Mary had been taken. Adam knew Lincoln's heart and struck where the light burned brightest. In the ruins of a southern plantation, the patriarch of vampires waited, ancient, unmoving, eyes like obsidian fire. "Join me," Adam whispered, voice like velvet over steel. "In this petty crusade, become what you were meant to be. Immortal, unbroken, free of weakness, free of love." Lincoln tightened his grip on the silver axe. "I choose weakness," he said. "I choose love. I choose humanity." The battle was merciless. Adam moved like shadow incarnate, fangs flashing, claws rending. Lincoln countered with fury forged in grief, every strike an echo of lost mothers, lost sons, lost innocence. Henry arrived in the chaos, immortal, damned, carrying the curse he had borne for centuries, and the resolve to end it. Adam's strength was monstrous. Bullets did nothing. Fire barely slowed him. Only silver could wound, and only the living could deliver the killing blow. Henry knew what must be done. He seized Adam, locking him in a death embrace, fang against fang, curse against curse. "Strike now," he roared. Lincoln hesitated, for the man who had saved him, trained him, had been his only guide through the darkness. But there was no choice. The axe fell. Silver met flesh. Ash swallowed the night. When the dust cleared, Adam was gone. Henry, too. Only silence remained, a silence heavier than victory. Lincoln carried Mary from the ruins. She lived, But the man who made him who he was now lingered only in whispers. The war above would soon end. Slavery would fall. The Union would endure. But Lincoln knew another truth, one no proclamation could cleanse. The shadows were not gone, only waiting. Part 8, The Legacy, Shadows Beneath the Marble. The war was over. Chains lay broken. Fields once soaked in blood grew quiet beneath the summer sun. The nation began to heal, at least on the surface. Abraham Lincoln walked among the ruins, not as a hunter, not as a warrior, but as a president. Statues would call him liberator. History would crown him martyr. But none would speak of the nights, the ash, the blood hidden in the pages of a secret journal. Mary stood beside him, her hand trembling in his. They never spoke of Adam or Henry or the shadows that had fed on a nation's pain. But sometimes, when the nights were too still, Mary swore she heard a hum, a melody low and mournful, carried on winds that whispered through the White House halls. Ford's Theater awaited, a night of reprieve, a rare breath of peace. Lincoln allowed himself, for the first time in years, to hope. History remembers the gunshot, the scream, the chaos. It remembers John Wilkes Booth. But history does not remember the pair of black eyes watching from the rafters. It does not remember the faint scent of ash in the air, or the soft hum that followed the silence. Henry was never seen again. Some say he turned to dust with Adam. Others whisper he still walks the night, immortal, carrying the burden Lincoln refused. And in the archives of the Vatican, far from America's marble monuments, a single entry remains, written in faded ink. The bloodline is severed, but the hunger endures. The shadows never truly die. They only sleep, waiting for the next war, the next crusade, the next fool brave enough to carry the axe.